mischief that was intended to deal with is members of the commission speaking about the matter while it's on investigation, or as the chairman says, was it intended also to extend as far as to the person who is the subject of the matter? Is he too prohibited from speaking? It stands to reason that the chairman is correct in his assessment in terms of what makes sense. What was the purpose of the provision?
And there lies the rub of the matter. What was the purpose of the provision? Well, Mr. Christie, I think you're going to be very pleased indeed, that we here at Jamaica 411 did a little research, and I think we can help you. When you all realize what happened, I think you and Jamaica will all be very surprised. All right, that's a preliminary. Let me welcome you to Jamaica 411. Thank you so much for stopping by, keeping me company as usual. If you're here with me for the first time, welcome. Please remember to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, share the video, as well as feel free to leave your comments in the comment section. To my subscribers and regular viewers, welcome back. So nice to have you. And of course, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for the support you're giving to this channel. I see my likes are over 1,000, and I thank you very much for your cooperation. I do appreciate it, and it encourages me to, want to bring you some more content. And I'm also thankful for all the kind words that you leave for me. My head gets swelled sometimes, but I try to tie it down. You're also very kind. Anyway, you know the ropes. Please give the video a thumbs up from now, as well as share, and then you rejoin me, because when we get down to business, you don't want to be distracted. And believe me, the things that I discover, old time people say, the longest liver see the most. And I am telling you the things that I see sometimes. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Well, let's get down to business. So you must be wondering what it is that I have for you today, and what it is that I have discovered. Well, I decided to a little research in this Integrity Commission Act. I wanted to know what was the body that used to look into the statutory declarations, if there were any statutory declarations. I just wanted to know something about it. And sure enough, I found some information. The NIA, that group that is headed by Trevor Monroe. Yes, I had something on the website. And it gave me some information which started me to look in a direction. And I decided to go and look up the acts. Now, what I discovered is that there were 3 acts. First, you have the Parliament Integrity of Members Act, which was established in 1973. That would be the Michael Manley government. Then we have the Contractor General's Act, which was established in 1983, and that would be the Edward Seaga government. And the final one was the Corruption Prevention Act, which was established in 2001. That would be by the P.J. Patterson government. Now, these acts, all 3 of them, were looking into corruption within the government sector. The Parliament Integrity of Members Act of 1973 was established to look at the members of Parliament and the senators, so the parliamentarians. Then you have the Contractor General Act of 1983. They were responsible for looking into the government procurement procedures and also the issuance of government licenses and permits, and to ensure that it was free of impropriety and irregularities. So that was the Contractor General Act of 1983. The third act, the Corruption Prevention Act, that one was established to seek to prevent corruption among public servants, excluding members of parliament and senators, so all other public servants, which would mean your councillors, those who are elected, those who were selected, those who were appointed to any position. And then you have those persons employed to government companies registered under the Companies Act, government bodies, statutory bodies such as NHT, Heart Trust, and so on, and the general civil service. Anybody performing a public duty under the for government on our behalf, right? So the Corruption Prevention Act covered them. So now, in order to manage, I suppose you might say, these three areas of corruption prevention, three commissions were established, one for each act. In 1973, the Parliamentary Integrity of Members Commission would have been established to carry out the requirements of that act. Then you have the Office of the Contractor General. That one was established to carry out the functions that was established under the Contractor General Act. And then last one was the Commission for the Prevention of Corruption. Now, the two commissions that were established to deal with parliamentarians as well as civil servants, both commissions require that the parliamentarians and civil servants were to submit to them statutory declarations of their assets, their liabilities, and incomes. And so this is where it all started. Eventually, some bright spark, for some reason, got it into their heads that what they're going to do is to create a single commission that will deal with all three matters. The Parliamentary Group Commission was amalgamated or merged with the other commission that was dealing with the civil servants or public servants, and then the Contractor General was subsumed as well into this single commission, and that now became the Integrity Commission Act. I hope you're following me, right? Great, wonderful. So that work, I'm not sure when the work started, but for certain, it took legs under the Portia Simpson Miller administration. Mark Golding was the Justice Minister, and you would have heard him taking credit for the Integrity Commission, because by the time the PNP left office in 2016 and the Labour Party took over, the act was more or less ready. The government was more or less bullied, I would say. Maybe that's a strong word. Harassed, maybe that's even stronger, by people like the Trevor Monroe of the world, and I don't know if some overseas meddling bodies were not doing the same, but they wanted them to hurry up and pass this act. And I do recall they were saying that the act was not ready, but because they were so besetted with corruption, people thought they were not just putting up that story in order not to pass the act. So they went ahead and they passed the act, and now the commission is complaining. But they were the first to complain about the act not being adequate, and everybody was down on them and tell them leave it alone. Now the commissioners and the staffers, the executive director is complaining about the act having conflicting laws and all kind of something. And then now the last thing you heard in that Oversight Committee on Tuesday, October 15, you would have heard the argument about whether or not it is okay for somebody who is under investigation by the Integrity Commission to come out and say that they are being investigated. You would have heard a crosstalk between Justice Seymour Panton and several of the members, including Pernell Charles Jr., as well as Julian Robinson on the opposition benches. So we're going to look now into the act and see what, remember now, this is supposed to have been a merger. So each of the acts have their own wording as to what the commission was set up for, the duties and the penalties, among other things. Each of them would have that in terms of what it is that they are supposed to do. And what the Integrity Commission Act is supposed to do is to merge all three together. Now, if there were no issues before in terms of the acts, why are we having issues now? It must have something to do with the merging. What was taken out, what was added in, what was overlooked, and so on. So we are going to have a look ourselves to see if we might discover what could be the issue that we are having today. Why it is that Greg Christie is saying that the law is flawed, a lot of contradictions, and so on and so forth. So let's have a look now. So let us go backward one step at a time and begin with the Corruption Prevention Act of 2001. And so here at section 3, you have, there is hereby established for the purposes of this act a body to be known as the Commission for the Prevention of Corruption. So there it is established. Under section 5 of the Corruption Prevention Act, it says the functions of the commission shall be. You're now going to see that the functions of the commission under the Corruption Prevention Act is just about the same as the functions of the Integrity Commission Act. It says, A, to receive and keep on record statutory declarations furnished by public servants pursuant to this act. B, to examine such statutory declarations and to request from a public servant any information relevant to a statutory declaration made by him, which in its opinion would assist in its examination. C, to make such independent inquiries and investigations relating to a statutory declaration as it thinks necessary. And then D and E now, to receive and investigate any complaint regarding an act of corruption, to conduct an investigation into an act of corruption on its own initiative if it is satisfied that there are reasonable grounds for such investigation. So they too had a mechanism for receiving complaints and information from the public, as is given now to Mr. Beresford. And everybody know who Mr. Beresford is now, right? Yeah, man, him famous, you know. Yeah, man, in the one like a Porsche in her cabinet. Yes, him. He's the one that is carrying out the function now. So they too had the same exact arrangement for the commission as now pertains under the Integrity Commission Act. Great. Now look at the right-hand corner. You see duty as to secrecy and to make declaration. Now this one now is where I want you to pay particular attention. This here is our bombshell revelation. Where you see that nice big arrow pointing to section 6, yes, I want you to place your attention there at section 6, subsection 1. Listen to what it says carefully. Remember now, these are the public servants who are supposed to be submitting statutory declarations to this particular commission at that time. It says, every public servant and every other person having official duty under this act or being employed in the administration of this act shall regard and deal with as secret and confidential all documents, declarations, letters, and other documents, and all other matters relating to a statutory declaration, and shall make and subscribe a declaration to that effect before a justice of the peace. This is the duty to secrecy that is also included in the Integrity Commission Act. And this is the particular section that is causing confusion as to whether or not the person who is being investigated can or has to be under the Secret Act as well as everybody else. In other words, they cannot talk or speak about the fact that they are being investigated. Seymour Panton said they can, and he see no reason why they can't. And the Director of Investigation and others are saying, no, no, no. It says nobody else, right? Nobody is supposed to speak, which includes the person who is being investigated. But as you see the wording here, it says every public servant and every other person having official duty, right, shall regard and deal with as secret and confidential, and it goes on, information, declaration, letters, anything. So if they receive a letter from the commission at that time to say that they're on the investigation, they cannot show that letter to anybody. They can't discuss it because it said every public servant, right, shall regard and deal with as secret and confidential all information, declarations, letter and other documents and all other matters relating to a statutory declaration. And the investigation into the statutory declaration would fall into that category as all other matters relating to the declaration. You follow? So here it is clearly stating in the previous act, the act previous to the Integrity Commission Act, that the persons who are being required by the law to submit statutory declarations, they are also required to keep secret the fact that they are being investigated. And any communication between them and the commission at the time is supposed to be secret. So there's no doubt about it. The question I want to ask you, my peeps, why was this part taken out? Why, when Mark Golding, as the Justice Minister who is taking credit, yes, my thing, yeah, me do it. This is my Integrity Commission, and he wanted to take credit for it. When it seemed as if it was working, he's not taking credit for it. No, when everybody complaining. The question I want to ask, why did Mark Golding and his draftsman, or whoever it was that did it, took that part out of it? Because that part is not in the Integrity Commission Act, and this is why Seymour Panton was able to say him not see no reason why them can't discuss it. Now, you would have heard Philip Powell saying that he was part of the parliamentary group that looked into, because a lot of them changed in 2020. So he was a part of that parliament in 2014 when the debate took place, and he claimed that the intention was that people who were investigated should be able to speak about the investigation if they so choose. The thing about it, though, and the odd thing about it, is that Comrade Powell was also a member of parliament at the time when this act was passed. He came into parliament in 1997, as I recall, and I think he was in the Senate probably before. So this act was passed 2001, 4 years later. So he would have been part of that debate where it says clearly that the secrecy is not just about the people who are working in the commission or anybody that they contact outside to ask for information. The secret is also to be kept by the person who is being investigated. He seemed to have forgotten that, but it's a long time, so you can forgive him. Right? So there was no intention whatsoever, none, by the parliamentarians to have the persons who are being investigated come out and tell people that they are being investigated. For some reason, Mark Golding took it out. He took it out. Probably he didn't and couldn't understand, or maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they left it out by mistake. And then we're going to look now to see if the act before this had the same provision or it had the provision in the Integrity Commission Act. And maybe that's the reason why Mark, having done his research, would have taken it out. And by the way, we're talking about the Englishman who prims up in our parliament illegally. Yes. Now, the difference between this particular act and the Integrity Commission is what happens if a parliamentarian failed to submit their statutory declaration in time or not at all, or if they made some kind of false statement, or there is reason to believe that they might have their assets exceeding their lawful income, illicit enrichment. The way in which it was treated is what was different. It says, the commission to make report. Any person fails to furnish the commission with a statutory declaration which he is required to furnish in accordance with this act, or the commission examines a statutory declaration and any related information or documents, or conducts an inquiry into any such statutory declaration and is not satisfied with any aspect thereof, the commission shall report the matter to the appropriate service commission board. So if they're dealing with a judge, it's a judicial service commission. If it's the police, it's the police service commission. Public servants, it's public service commission. So it says the appropriate service commission board, body, or other authority, and the director of public prosecutions, setting out such details and particulars as it thinks fit. Under the Integrity Commission Act, that has changed. The Integrity Commission Act now has its own prosecutor. So the matter is referred to the investigator, which is also in-house, and the prosecutor, which is also in-house. So those are the main differences between the two acts. Next, we're looking at the Contractor General Act, which came into being in 1983. And that's Section 5, it speaks of the independence of the Contractor General. And I suppose the words that you heard spoken of in the Oversight Committee, where it says at 5.1, in the exercise of the powers conferred upon him by this act, a Contractor General shall not be subject to the direction or control of any other person or authority. They adopted that in the Integrity Commission Act to refer to the commission, and in the process went and added something else which suggested that it is responsible, or it has to report to Parliament. And that was what you heard Malahoo Ford saying. And Greg Christie, having learned with Justice Panton that is in the Act. So we're looking at Integrity Commission Act, Section 5.1. It says, there is hereby established for the purposes of this Act a Commission of Parliament to be known as the Integrity Commission Act. And it was set up as a body corporate, which means that all the persons who are employed to the Integrity Commission are public servants. Now look at what it says at subsection 4 that I circled below. You'll see mention 34.3, sections 34.3 and 36.4. 34.3 is to do with the Director of Corruption Prosecution's powers, which means that she's also not under the direction or control of anyone, just like the DPP. And 36.4 is to do with the reports. So let me read it. The Commission shall, subject to sections 34.3 and 36.4, be ultimately responsible and accountable to Parliament for all matters relating to the functions of the Commissioner, and monitor and report to Parliament on the operation and effectiveness of the provisions of this Act. So what are they responsible to do? To account to Parliament for all matters relating to the functions of the Commission. So it is necessary for them to come to the Oversight Committee. I hear people saying, what is the purpose of the Oversight Committee? I hear people asking, why are the commissions there? This is the reason why. The commissioners were present at the Oversight Committee because they are ultimately the ones who are in charge of the Integrity Commission. And the Integrity Commission is accountable to Parliament for all matters relating to the functions of the Commission. And what are those functions, among other things? To receive statutory declarations, to check or examine and certify them, to receive information or complaints from the public, to monitor and oversee the government procurement procedures, and the issuance of government licenses and permits, among other things. Those are the functions. They are required by Section 36, if I recall well, to submit reports. And also, when it comes to the law, it says monitor and report to Parliament on the operation and effectiveness of the provisions of this act. So when you see they go to Parliament and telling the Parliament, look, you need to change this law, you need to add this into law, and so on and so forth, they are carrying out their function to, to report on the effectiveness of the provisions. They are the ones that are working with this act. This now is Section 6, subsection 3, that you heard Justice Panton scolding the parliamentarians on when they talk about they should call them before the Parliament and give them orders. And it says, in the exercise of its powers and performance of its functions under this Act, the Commission shall not be subject to the direction or control of any other person or authority other than the court by way of a judicial review, which is the reason why the Prime Minister Andrew Holness, in trying to get some satisfaction, since he disagreed with the report, he can hardly go to them and tell them to change it. He can't negotiate, he can't do anything. The only way he can get a change is to go to the courts to get a judicial review. That's what that is all about. This is the act that the Parliament set up. Now, is this in contradiction to them reporting to Parliament? No, I don't think so. There's no mess here. The function of them reporting to Parliament is them reporting to Parliament about their functions and any issues they have and need change. That's a different matter from the Parliament calling them up and say, look, what is happening with this and what is happening with that? They ought to call them and ask them about these statutory declarations, because they're certainly not getting them out. What they cannot do is say to them in the Parliament, while they are there, you need to get this out or you need to do that, or direct them in any way. No. The only thing the Parliament can do is draft up laws that change the way how they operate. Simple as that. We now come to the final act, and that is the first of the lot, the Parliament Integrity of Members Act, which was passed in 1973, July 26. And I think we may call this act the grandpappy of the Integrity Commission Act. It says the duty of the parliamentarian to furnish statutory declaration to the Commission in the second schedule. And here it is where it's established the time frame for when it's due, which is the 31st of December, from January 1 to December 31 of each year. And it would be submitted on the 31st of March of the following year. So they give them 3 months to submit the statutory declaration. The functions of this commission is also the same as the Integrity Commission, to receive and keep record of the statutory declaration. And down to D, it says to receive and investigate any complaint against a parliamentarian regarding an act of corruption within the meaning of Section 14 of the Corruption Prevention Act. Of course, you know that Corruption Prevention Act came into being in 2001. So this was an addition. As you can see in the notes, it was added 2002. Now, I made it a little bigger for you because I want you to see what Section 6 says. It says over on the right, in the red, duty as to secrecy and to make declaration. So this now is also in the Corruption Prevention Act. You remember I read that? And it is also in the Integrity Commission Act. Now, remember in the Corruption Prevention Act, it says that the civil servant is also to keep the matter secret of any investigation that is being done in their statutory declaration. You recall that? Yes. Let's see what this says now, which is the parent of them all. And I also want to remind you that this particular act, the Parliament Integrity of Members, this particular act is dealing with the parliamentarians. Remember, the Corruption of Prevention Act was dealing with all other civil servants. This particular act, only the parliamentarians, the MPs and senators. And let's see what it says now about MPs and the senators with respect to secrecy. Subject to the provisions of subsection 3 and of section 13, every member and every other person having official duty under this act or being employed in the administration of this act shall regard and deal with all information, declarations, letters, and other documents, and all other matters relating to a statutory declaration as secret and confidential, and shall make and subscribe a declaration to that effect before a justice of the peace. Who are the members that they are talking about? It says the integrity of members. These are the members of parliament and the senators. They are the members. So let me read that part. Again, it says subject to the provisions of subsection 3 and of section 13, every member, every parliamentarian, every senator, and every other person having official duty under this act, which would be the commissioners and their staff. They are all supposed to keep matters relating to the statutory declaration secret and confidential. So here again, this is the parent, this is the daddy of the other two acts, the Corruption Prevention Act and also the Integrity Commission Act. And the intention of the parliamentarians, the intention of the parliamentarians was that the matter of investigation into the statutory declaration, any communication between the parliamentarians, the public servants, are supposed to be kept confidential. None of it is supposed to be communicated to anybody else. What happened in the Integrity Commission Act is that that was removed and replaced with words that are ambiguous. It is clear here, the one that Mark produced in the Integrity Commission Act, Mark Golding, though it is clear to everybody else, has resulted in confusion because it failed to mention, you see, when you're making an act, you have to mention everything, right? Any other person ought to have said any other person, including or excluding the person being investigated. Now, for me, it is clear enough. It says any other person means including the person who is being investigated. But having not said so, you leave room now for interpretation that, well, since this person's confidentiality is being protected, perhaps he is not included. No, you don't leave those careless rooms. You need to shut them up. And this is the information that I have for you, which now makes it clear that it has never been the intention of the Parliament that the persons being investigated are allowed to discuss the fact that they are being investigated by the Integrity Commission. And since the Integrity Commission Act, even though it took that part out, it never specifically said that they are to be excluded and allowed to speak. Therefore, I would suggest that the parliamentarians, the members of the Oversight Committee, I think they should call in the Director of Corruption Prosecution, because as it says here, that the Director of Corruption Prosecution shall have the conduct of prosecutions in respect of acts of corruption and offenses committed under this act. And if Justice Panton is not correct, it will be the Director of Corruption Prosecution who will be charging persons who speak out of turn. So I would suggest you call her in and ask her and let her tell you what her understanding of the law is. That is my suggestion before anybody go out there and talk and put yourself into trouble. And that is what I have for you today. But let us take another little listen to Mr. Christie, and then I'll wrap up.
The mischief that was intended to deal with is members of the commission speaking about the matter while it's on investigation, or as the chairman says, was it intended also to extend as far as to the person who is the subject of the matter? Is he too prohibited from speaking? It stands to reason that the chairman is correct in his assessment in terms of what makes sense. What was the purpose of the provision? The member across the floor, he is hanging his hat on any other person, and that's what I read out. And I read it out in the sense that this is what the law states. Now, what do you, the lawmaker, mean by that? And yes, sir, there are members of the public who are listed, and they are confused.
No, Mr. Christie, I beg to differ. I think they are quite clear on the matter now. Aren't you? If you are or if you are not, please say so in the comment section. All right, so thanks so much for listening to me. Thanks for sharing, liking, subscribing, and leaving your comments. Until next time, you take very good care of yourselves and walk good.